What happened to Japan after World War II? Japan underwent profound change following World War II. The nation was occupied by Allied forces led by the United States after its defeat in 1945, bringing about extensive social, economic, and political reforms. In 1947, Japan ratified a new constitution, ending its war and transitioning into a democratic, peaceful nation. By the 1960s, Japan had become one of the world's leading economies thanks to economic modernization and reconstruction. Japan's post-war rise to prominence as a model of perseverance, peace, and technological advancement shaped the modern world's role, despite the initial devastation. In this video, we'll explore the key moments and aftermath of Japan's defeat in World War II. How was Japan defeated? What happened to Japanese soldiers after World War II? How was life in Japan after the war? Why was Emperor Hirohito allowed to continue leading the country after the war? Number 1. How was Japan defeated? Due to a combination of military setbacks, resource shortages, and the overwhelming power of the Allies, Japan was defeated in World War II. Military defeats. The Battle of Midway in June 1942 was a turning point where Japan lost 4 crucial aircraft carriers, crippling its naval strength and halting its Pacific expansion. This loss shifted the momentum to the Allies. Following this, the US launched an island-hopping campaign, capturing key islands like Iwo Jima and Okinawa. These battles brought US forces closer to Japan's home islands, further weakening Japan's defenses. Economic and resource depletion. Japan's war effort heavily relied on resources from occupied territories in Southeast Asia, particularly oil. As the Allies retook these territories and imposed a naval blockade, Japan's access to vital supplies was cut off. By 1945, Japan's economy was on the verge of collapse, with severe shortages of food, fuel, and raw materials. The blockade also prevented reinforcements and supplies from reaching Japanese forces. Strategic bombing. The United States launched extensive bombing campaigns against Japanese cities, focusing on both civilian and industrial areas. In March 1945, tens of thousands died when Tokyo was firebombed, and Japan's war industry was devastated. Japan's population was demoralized and its capacity to sustain the war effort was weakened as a result of these bombings. Atomic bombings and the Soviet invasion. The Soviet Union declared war on Japan in August 1945, invaded Manchuria quickly, and defeated Japan's Guangdong Army. The United States dropped atomic bombs on Hiroshima and Nagasaki simultaneously on August 6th and 9th, respectively, causing unprecedented destruction. Japan had to give up when these things happened together. Japan declared its unconditional surrender on August 15, 1945, officially ending World War II. Number 2. What happened to Japanese soldiers after World War II? After the Second Great War, Japanese troopers confronted different results relying upon their area and circumstance. Upon Japan's acquiescence in August 1945, most fighters were retired and gotten back to a crushed country. Many confronted hardships reintegrating into regular citizen life, with Japan experiencing far-reaching annihilation, food deficiencies, and financial breakdown. Joblessness was high, and returning troopers frequently battled with the mental injury of the conflict. For those captured during the war, their experiences varied. Japanese POWs held by the United States, Britain, and other allies were treated relatively well under international law and repatriated within a few years. However, Japanese soldiers captured by the Soviet Union faced harsher conditions. Tens of thousands were sent to labor camps in Siberia, where they endured forced labor and extreme conditions, with many dying in captivity. Some were not released until the early 1950s. Additionally, a small number of soldiers stationed in remote locations continued fighting for years, unaware that the war had ended. The most famous example is Hiro Onoda, who continued guerrilla warfare in the Philippines until 1974. Finally, several Japanese soldiers and officers were put on trial for war crimes, with some being convicted and sentenced to prison or execution for their roles in wartime atrocities. Number 3. How was life in Japan after the war? Life in Japan after World War II was very difficult, but it marked the beginning of a great change. The country was devastated, and cities, industries, and infrastructure were severely damaged by the explosion. Millions of Japanese people face homelessness, unemployment, and food insecurity. The promise remained, and many struggled to live it up in the years after the war. Japan was occupied from 1945 to 1952 by the United States Army led by General Douglas MacArthur. This period saw major reforms aimed at democratization and reconstruction of the country. The new constitution promulgated in 1947 introduced a democratic government, abolished war, and provided for civil rights. Land reform breaks up large plantations, redistributes land to squatters, and strengthens unions. Despite the changes, the main problem of the war was the economic problem. Factories were destroyed and Japan's industrial productivity plummeted. However, with US financial aid and a focus on reconstruction, Japan's economy slowly recovered. In the 1950s, Japan entered a period of rapid economic growth, known as the Japanese economic miracle, and by the 1960s Japan had become one of the world's largest economies. Most of the world, socially, the post-war era saw a shift in traditional family roles and a new focus on education, modernity, and technology. Number 4. Why was Emperor Hirohito allowed to continue leading the country after the war? Emperor Hirohito was allowed to continue in a ceremonial role after World War II for several strategic reasons. His position as the emperor was deeply ingrained in Japanese culture and society, and removing him could have triggered significant unrest among the Japanese people. General Douglas MacArthur, who oversaw the US occupation, believed that retaining Hirohito would help maintain social stability during the challenging transition to democracy. Additionally, Hirohito's influence was seen as a tool for promoting acceptance of the Allied reforms and the new constitution, which transformed him from an absolute ruler to a constitutional monarch without political power. His radio announcement of Japan's surrender in August 1945 further solidified his position as a stabilizing figure. By allowing him to remain a symbol of continuity, the Allies aimed to foster cooperation among the Japanese populace, facilitating Japan's recovery and transition into a peaceful, democratic nation in the post-war era. Thank you for being to the end of the video. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and tell us what you think about this video below in the comments section. Let's meet again with another interesting video.